Chapter 1. My brother's wife was 8 months pregnant when he passed away. Chenxue said she didn't want her child to be without a father. To repay my brother's life-saving grace, I became the child's father. Chenxue loved to work, so I resigned and became a stay-at-home husband, taking care of their daily needs for 7 years. But she remained distant, only becoming gentle when she was beneath me. Afterward, she would check if the condom had broken. On New Year's Eve, the condom accidentally broke. Furious, Chenxue locked me on the open-air balcony to be punished by the rain. My son came running with an umbrella, but he coldly bypassed me and handed the umbrella to the nanny, who was about to go out. At that moment, I decided to leave. On the first day of the Lunar New Year, enduring the discomfort of a high fever and fatigue, I handed her the divorce papers. She frowned displeasedly and asked, "Just because of what happened last night?" Chun Binding, if you don't cross the line, I won't punish you. Always look for the reasons within yourself. I suppressed the urge to defend myself and said hoarsely, "Sign it." What about our son? He's not my biological child anyway, so of course, I won't fight for custody. But you don't need to divide the property with me. Consider that part as my child support for him. Chenxue looked up in surprise, and no wonder, since I usually treasured the child the most. She put on a stern face and threatened, "I advise you to stop while you're ahead. If you keep acting up, there will be no turning back." It seemed she believed I was throwing a tantrum by divorcing. But what she didn't know was that from the moment I decided to divorce, I had no intention of turning back. I didn't explain further and took the signed divorce papers back to my room. Seeing me packing my luggage, Chenxue said, "Chun Binding, the paperwork will take some time. You don't have to rush to move out." I calmly replied to her with the same words she had once used to goad me. "No, it's better to cut the knot quickly when dealing with things." She didn't say anything more. I had a lot of luggage, but I only took the essentials. When I dragged my suitcase out, Chao Ishi was in the living room reading a science newspaper. Extremely self-disciplined at such a young age, just like his mother, and of course, just as cold to me as his mother. He put down the book, walked up to me, and said impatiently, "Are you really going to divorce, Mom?" I nodded. Although he had a blank expression, I could still see the joy in the corners of his eyes. Then he said to me in a patronizing tone, "In the future, I'll allow you to visit me, but only once a month. I'm afraid Uncle Lou will be unhappy if you visit too often." The Uncle Lou he mentioned was Chenxue's first love, Lu Feng. If Lu's family hadn't had problems and emigrated, Chenxue probably wouldn't have married my brother. Recently, Lu Feng returned to the country, and the two reconnected. And she often took Chao Ishi to see Lu Feng. Lu Feng is a race car driver, and Chao Ishi thinks he's very cool and impressive. But he doesn't know that I once won the CRC and CDCC Drivers' Championship for several consecutive years. He hates me, and he won't even give me a chance to take him racing. I used to be sad and hurt because he liked Lu Feng and didn't like me, but now my heart is as calm as still water. What happened last night made me see things clearly. A white-eyed wolf can't be tamed. I didn't even give him a glance and left directly. When I was about to reach the gate, Chenxue came out. "What's the hurry? You haven't even found a place to live yet." I didn't speak and opened the gate. "Where are you going?" "I'll have the driver take you." "No need." After being drenched in the rain all night, my body was burning hot and my head was splitting. Dragging my body, which could collapse at any moment, I used my last bit of strength to walk out of the gate. But after taking a few steps, my vision went black and I fell. Chapter 2. I woke up again in the hospital. A passerby Annie had brought me here. The doctor said my condition was very serious and asked why I didn't have any family members accompanying me. "I'm sorry, doctor. I don't have any family." The doctor instantly showed a look of sympathy. I smiled bitterly. Strangers I'd never met could show me kindness. Yet the mother and son I'd poured my heart and soul into for 7 years could be so cruel. For the first time, I felt like these years had been worthless. After a few 4 drips, my fever subsided, and I left the hospital. I really wanted to take a spontaneous trip to clear my head. But life isn't a TV drama. I hadn't worked in years, and Chenxue only gave me a little money for groceries. I hadn't saved much. I stayed in a hotel temporarily. The next day, I called the director at the TV station where I used to work. Before I got married, I was the most popular host of the weather segment. At the time, when I decided to resign, Many of the executives felt it was a pity, but I wholeheartedly gave up my career for Chenxue. I was young and impetuous then, truly believing that sincerity could be exchanged for sincerity. Unfortunately, it ended like this. I hadn't faced a camera in 7 years, so I didn't have high hopes. Unexpectedly, the director immediately arranged a meeting for me with the station manager. Over the years, although I was busy taking care of the mother and son, I still found time to exercise and kept my figure in good shape. Coupled with my outstanding professional abilities from before, the leadership team decided to give me another chance after a discussion. I took my luggage and moved into the apartment the station manager prepared for me, starting a new life. After a week of getting familiar with the work again, I successfully returned to my post. On the first day back on stage, I broke the highest ratings record in the 7 years since I left. The station manager was very happy and held a celebration banquet. When a junior offered me a toast, I instinctively refused. Sorry, I don't drink. After saying that, I remembered that it wasn't that I didn't drink, but because Chenxue once said she didn't like me drinking, I quit. Now that we were divorced, I naturally didn't need to care about her preferences. I smiled and took the glass. Just kidding, I can drink. With that, I raised my head and drank it all in one gulp. After a few rounds of drinks, I was a little drunk when my phone rang. It was the police. Mr. Chen Baining, we found your nephew. I sobered up instantly and immediately took a taxi to the police station. When I saw the little guy at the police station, my eyes instantly turned red. It said that sons take after their maternal uncles, and it's absolutely true. This little guy was practically a miniature version of me. Sure enough, the police told me that after comparing his DNA with my sister and brother-in-law's, they confirmed that he was their lost son. Years ago, my sister took Kiki to the park. She turned around to buy him cotton candy, and he disappeared. My sister, blaming herself and overwhelmed with grief, suffered a mental breakdown. On the 10th day after the child was lost, she couldn't bear it anymore and committed suicide, losing his wife and son one after another. My brother-in-law aged more than 10 years overnight. He, a grown man, cried like a child. It was really hard for me to watch. At that time, Chenxue was only 3 years old and very attached to me. He only stopped crying when I held him. But unfortunately, in order to help my brother-in-law find Kiki, I had to painfully hand Chenxue over to his maternal grandmother. A month later, someone said they saw a child who looked very similar in a town. My brother-in-law rushed there without stopping, but when he arrived, he found that even the gender was different. My brother-in-law was heartbroken and, in a daze, fell into a river and unfortunately drowned. Not long after, the police told me that the human traffickers took the children to smuggle them into the United States, but the ship they were on capsized and sank. Everyone on the ship perished. Your nephew was likely among them. At this point, all leads were completely cut off, and I was left with only Chenxue and Chenxue as my only relatives. Chapter 3. After finishing up here, I went to my mother-in-law's to pick up Chenxue. I hadn't expected that Chenxue wouldn't call me daddy in his sweet little voice anymore. He didn't remember me. Later, after he started school and interacted with his classmates, he liked me even less. He complained that I wasn't as impressive as other dads and that I didn't have a proper job. The police officer's words pulled me out of my memories. It turned out that Chenxue was clever and had successfully escaped by hiding in a dumpster. He hadn't boarded that ship. A homeless man had taken him home, and the two had depended on each other all these years. Recently, the old man passed away, and someone noticed the child living alone and called the police. That's how he was found. Chenxue was dark, thin, and timid, his appearance truly heartbreaking. I squatted down and touched his small head. "Don't be afraid. I'm your uncle." He blinked his eyes, seemingly lost in thought. "Sweetheart, you'll never go hungry or cold again. From now on, you'll live with your uncle." My brother-in-law was an orphan, so there were no grandparents. Now, I was Chenxue's only living relative. I took Chenxue home, washed him clean, and dressed him in new clothes. Holding his small hand, I discovered it was covered in chilblains. I got the first aid kit and gently applied medicine. The little guy was tough. Although it must have hurt, he endured it without a sound. I put on a cartoon for him. "Stay here for a bit. Uncle will cook you some noodles." After I finished cooking, I called him, only to find he had fallen asleep at some point. I covered him with a blanket, and he woke up. He rubbed his eyes, looking dazed. I was reminded of how Chao Ishi used to be so clingy every time he woke up. He would hug my neck slow and sloth-like, incredibly cute. I couldn't help but hold Kulu in my arms. He didn't hug my neck like Chao Ishi, but instead touched my face. I came back to my senses. Kulu, I'm your uncle. From now on, you'll be with your uncle. This is our home. The little guy looked up at me, his eyes bright. Uncle? Then why aren't you daddy? Uncle is your mom's brother, not daddy. Do you want to see mommy and daddy? He nodded, and I held him, showing him old photos one by one, explaining them as I went. After looking at the photos, he suddenly kissed my face and called me uncle in a sweet, childish voice. At that moment, my heart melted. Kulu was old enough to start school, but he hadn't attended yet. I quickly contacted a kindergarten and enrolled him. He adapted quickly, unlike Chao Ishi, who had cried and fussed. Life went on smoothly, and Kulu and I grew closer. I enjoyed making snacks. The things Chao Ishi had disliked, Kulu ate happily. One day, as I was making pumpkin balls for Kulu, I received a call from Chenxue. She sounded like she had just woken up, her voice hoarse as she asked, "There's a mall opening ceremony tomorrow." Instinctively, I told her everything from which dress to which jewelry, even specifying which wardrobe and which item. After speaking, I fell silent, realizing this had become a mechanical memory. Chenxue still seemed half asleep. I could hear her rummaging through things. She remained silent, so I prompted her, "If there's nothing else, I'll hang up." She suddenly asked if I wanted to go with her tomorrow. I found it ironic. Before, when we were married, I had asked her to take me to these events, and she had never agreed. Now, after the divorce, why bother? I won't go. And please don't call me again. For these matters, whether it's a stylist or a housekeeper, just don't contact me. We're divorced. Chapter 4. After saying that, I was about to hang up, but I heard her change the subject. I took Chao Ishi to Zhongmao Times for swimming lessons today. You can come and see him. No need. With that, I hung up without hesitation, not waiting for her to speak. Putting down my phone, I continued to make pumpkin balls for Kayleigh. Life went on peacefully like this. Until that day, when I came out of the live broadcast room, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Chao Ishi's kindergarten homeroom teacher. She said that today was the parent-child day for art class, and parents needed to participate with their children. All the parents had arrived, except for Chao Ishi's. The teacher was very enthusiastic in inviting me, but I interrupted her. "Teacher, I'm sorry. I'm divorced from Chao Ishi's mother. His custody was awarded to his mother. I won't be involved in these matters anymore." The teacher was a little embarrassed. I continued, "Is Chao Ishi next to you?" After receiving a positive answer from the teacher, I asked her to turn on the speakerphone. In front of the whole class and their parents, I spoke calmly. "Chao Ishi, you confirmed last time that your mother and I are divorced. I am no longer your father, and I will no longer be involved in your affairs. Don't call me again in the future." After saying that, I apologized to the teacher and hung up. After work, I picked up Kayleigh from kindergarten, and we went to eat at Heideleo. The table next to us was actually celebrating a birthday. I suddenly thought of Kayleigh's birthday. I checked the calendar, and it was actually this Sunday. On Sunday, I pushed aside all my work in advance, just to spend time with Kayleigh. He probably hasn't had a birthday in years. After ordering, I told him to wait at the table while I went to get the cake. I was carrying the cake towards the restaurant when I unexpectedly ran into Chenxue. Lu Feng was standing next to her. Lu Feng spoke first. "Weren't you having a divorce fight with Shuer?" I ignored him and walked past them, but Chenxue grabbed me. She said sarcastically, "Weren't you so tough? I knew you couldn't last a few days. Now you're shamelessly coming back with a cake to celebrate your son's birthday. Aren't you embarrassed?" I was speechless. "Move, who said I'm celebrating his birthday?" Chenxue stiffened. "If not for your son, then who?" I didn't want to get entangled with her. "I don't want to talk about it anymore. Just move. You three have a good time." Chenxue's face darkened instantly. "Chen Baining, that's enough. Don't make me really angry." I pushed her away directly and entered the restaurant. Kayleigh smiled and waved at me as soon as he saw me, and I waved back at him. Chao Ishi was sitting at the table next to Kayleigh. He looked at me with disgust, obviously mistaking that I was waving at him. I ignored him and sat down next to Kayleigh. Chenxue and the others came in and were shocked to see Kayleigh and me. "Chen Baining, who is he?" "None of your business." Chenxue was very angry, but she refrained from losing her temper in public. Kayleigh and I devoured our food with gusto. When we were almost finished, Kayleigh wanted to go to the restroom. I offered to go with him, but he said he didn't need me to, so I didn't insist. I saw Chao Ishi also walking towards the restroom. I figured he was going to use the restroom, so I didn't think much of it. But a moment later, a waiter shouted, "Quick, who are the parents? There are 2 kids fighting here." I jumped up and ran towards the restroom. Chao Ishi and Kayleigh were lying on the ground, both of them bruised and battered. Seeing me, Chao Ishi finally couldn't hold back his tears and said with red eyes, "Dad, it hurts." Under his helpless and pitiful gaze, I didn't hesitate to squat down and hug Kayleigh. Chapter 5. Kola, are you okay? Did he hurt you? I looked around to see if Kola was injured. Chao Ishi broke down. He suddenly burst into tears. Actually, he had rarely cried since starting kindergarten. But now he was looking at me, crying uncontrollably, looking really aggrieved and upset. Before, if I saw him like this, I would immediately squat down and hug him comfortingly, gently coaxing him. Don't cry, Daddy's here." But now I was indifferent, concerned only about Kola. Kola obediently said he was fine. "Uncle, he told me to stay away from you. He said you were his dad. Is that true?" I shook my head. "He's talking nonsense. Uncle is not his dad." Chao Ishi heard this and suddenly stopped crying. As if frightened, his eyes widened suddenly. At this moment, Chenxue's voice preceded her arrival. "TSK, still stubborn. Hearing your son got into a fight, you still—" But she stopped halfway. I knew she was unconcerned, since she heard the kid got in a fight. It turned out she mistakenly thought I would come to take care of Chao Ishi. She saw Chao Ishi standing alone in the corner, and me holding Kola in my arms. She was shocked. With an angry face, she said, "Chun Baining, your son is crying from being beaten, and you're holding someone else's son and comforting him." As she spoke, she reached out to pull Kola away, but I slapped her hand away. "We are divorced, and it was made clear in the divorce. He is no longer my son. He is afraid his Uncle Lu will be sad and told me to visit him less. Did you forget? I only have my nephew Kola now. I have no son." I once accidentally overheard Chao Ishi talking to Lu Feng on the phone. He said, "My dad is really annoying. I can't stand him anymore. Uncle Lu, I wish you were my dad. If Dad and Mom get divorced, will you marry my mom? I want you to be my dad." Now I'm fulfilling his wish. He should be very happy, right? I picked up Kola and prepared to leave, but Lu Feng stopped me, in his teacher-like tone. "Brother Baining, I have to say a few words to you. Xiaoxi is the son you raised. How can you say that?" I sneered. "You're always sowing discord between us. You think I don't know? Didn't you teach him to tell his mom to replace me as his dad? Anyway, he likes you more. Why don't you just be his dad?" Chenxue looked at Lu Feng in shock. Lu Feng quickly denied it. "Swear, don't listen to his nonsense." I didn't bother to waste my breath on them. I left the sentence, "I wish you 3 a happy family." Then I left with Kola. A week later, I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, I found it was Chao Ishi. His voice was a little choked up. "Dad, you dialed the wrong number. I'm not your dad." The other side suddenly started sobbing. It seems that he was crying. "Dad, I'm in so much pain. My arm is injured." My heart suddenly tightened, and I reached out and hung up the phone. I was afraid that if I listened to one more sentence, I would subconsciously soften. He was the child I had cared for with all my heart for 6 years. He was the flesh and blood of my good brother. When my brother and I were trapped in an earthquake, it was my brother who sacrificed himself to give me a chance to live. I always treated Chao Ishi like my own child. Looking at him, it was as if my good brother was still alive. He was really clingy to me when he was little. When he was learning to speak, the first word he said was Dad. When he was little, Chenxue would hold him. He would cry, but he won't when he was in my embrace. He would just stay there quietly, very cute. That time, when I sent him to his grandmother's house, it was a turning point. After that, he was no longer clingy to me. He no longer insisted on sleeping with me at night, but wanted Chenxue to put him to bed. At this moment, his fragile and soft voice made those sealed memories gush out like spring water. Chapter 6. Uncle, why are you crying? Kola wiped my tears with his little hand, and only then did I realize that my eyes were wet. Luckily, I had Kola. The little guy was so sweet and sensible. He could heal all my negativity. After a while, Chenxue called. I didn't answer, but she kept calling, so I had to block her number. But she'd call from different unknown numbers, so I had to pick up. Can you please stop calling? We're divorced. If it's about the divorce certificate, you can text me. Our son is hurt. Lu Feng took him go-karting, and he got injured. He's in a lot of pain and keeps asking for you. If he's hurt, find a doctor. Why are you calling me? I can't heal him. Chenxue said incredulously. He's the son you've taken care of for 6 years. How can you say something so cold-blooded? I found it funny. Cold-blooded? I'm just fulfilling your wishes, and his. Didn't he say he didn't like me and wanted his Uncle Lu to be his dad? Now that his leg is injured, he should go to his new dad. Why is he looking for me? And don't you think you mother and son are ridiculous? When I was around, you hated me to the extreme. Now that I've made way, you call every few days. Uncle, look, I finished my puzzle. The phone suddenly switched to Xiaoishi. His voice was full of anger and disbelief. Dad, I don't care, you're my dad. I won't let anyone take you away. You can only play puzzles with me. I used to only play puzzles with him, but he said they were childish and not as fun as video games. Video games hurt his eyes, so I forbade him from playing them. Now he wants to play with me again, but I no longer consider him my son. I turned and smiled, praising Cola. Wow, great! Cola is so amazing. Today, you're rewarded with roasted chicken wings. Dad, do you really not like me anymore? Do you like that guy now? I interrupted him. I really don't like you anymore. You're not worth my affection. Go find your beloved Uncle Lu. I'm not your dad anymore. With that, I hung up the phone. Life went on peacefully like this. I saw Chenxue again at my doorstep. Cola and I had just stepped out of the elevator when I saw her, and next to her was Xiaoishi. Chenxue's opening line was very annoying. Are you over it? If so, pack your things and come home with me. She's so self-righteous. She still thinks I'm just throwing a tantrum. I laughed out of anger. Chenxue, I've said it many times, I really don't want to be with you anymore. I've had enough of this life. You've signed the divorce agreement. This dragging on is really not your style. I know it's because of what I did to punish you that day. I'm humbling myself to apologize to you. Okay. I chuckled. You're overthinking. That day was just a trigger. It's not the main point. The main point is that I don't want to live with you anymore. And a reminder, this is not how you apologize. With that, I walked past him to open the door. Just as I was about to enter, Xiaoishi suddenly hugged my leg, looking up at me with pleading eyes. Dad, do you really not want me anymore? I nodded. Don't you like Uncle Lu more? He whispered. I don't like him anymore. I didn't answer him and took Cola's hand, entering the house. Chapter 7. So this is where you live? I really don't know what you're thinking, leaving a perfectly good villa to come to this cramped place where you can't even stretch your legs. My patience ran out, and I snapped. Chenxue, can't you understand plain words? We're divorced. Entering someone's home without the owner's permission is called trespassing. Get out. She still thought I was throwing a tantrum and didn't leave, so I had to ask the building management to escort her and Xiaoishi out. Early the next morning, I went to work, but I saw her waiting for me at the entrance of the residential area's underground parking garage. I didn't want to deal with her, but her car blocked mine. She rolled down the window. Let's talk about the divorce. It was time to make a clean break. Otherwise, this constant entanglement was really affecting my mood. We chose the nearest cafe. I sat across from her and said coldly, What do you want to talk about? You haven't been eating well lately. You've lost some weight. I paused. Don't say irrelevant things. If we're talking about the divorce, let's only talk about the divorce. Her face visibly darkened. Are you really determined to divorce me? What about our son? Let's not talk about these repetitive topics. We already agreed the other day. You have custody, and I don't need visitation rights. He's the child you've personally taken care of for 6 years. Are you really going to just stand by and watch him become a child without a father? I sneered. How can he be without a father? Lu Feng could be his father just fine. Anyway, Xiaoishi likes him, and you like him too. You all got what you wanted. The corners of her lips pressed into a straight line, and after a pause, she said, Don't misunderstand, Lu Feng and I are innocent. It's not what you think. Stop pretending like you can't bear to part with me and trying to win me back. It makes me sick. She frowned and defended herself. I really didn't want to divorce you, Yeah, she really didn't want to divorce me. How could she bear to let go of a free nanny? The reason she signed the divorce agreement without hesitation was that she was certain I was throwing a tantrum because of what happened that day. She thought that when my anger subsided and I thought things through, I would realize that I couldn't bear to be without her and our son, and I would definitely compromise and go back for them. At the very least, for the sake of my brother, I would go back. At that time, she would be able to completely control me, and maybe even mock me for coming back to beg for reconciliation after only a few days. Unfortunately, she was wrong. She was overconfident. I had completely accumulated enough disappointment. As for the favor I owed my brother, I will explain it to him properly when I see him. I think he will understand. She was still chattering on with explanations, but I didn't hear a word. Okay, we've reached an agreement. I'll assume you understand what I mean. From now on, we go our separate ways. I've booked an appointment at the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow to get the divorce certificate. I hope you'll be on time. Early the next morning, I went to the Civil Affairs Bureau. I was worried about Kulu being home alone, so I brought him along. Chenxue was fairly trustworthy and arrived shortly after. But she also brought Xiaoishi. Beining, I came on time, but I'm not here to divorce you. I was puzzled. What do you mean? Our son cried all night last night. He missed you so much he couldn't sleep. He's just a child. He did say a lot of hurtful things to you before, but he's the child you've held in your palm and cherished for so many years. Can you really bear to see him so sad? Look at the dark circles under his eyes, she said, pulling Chao Ishi in front of me. Chao Ishi looked at me pitifully with red and swollen eyes. I used to treat him as my precious treasure, taking care of him meticulously, afraid he would melt in my mouth or break in my hands. But he doesn't deserve my love. Chapter 8. I remember once when kindergarten was dismissed. I want to pick him up. Usually, the family nanny would pick him up, but this time it was me. I reached out to take his hand, but the teacher looked at me warily. She looked down and asked him, Chao Ishi, who is he? You can't go with him if you don't know him. He looked at me hesitantly, without saying a word. I don't know where Lu Feng popped up from. Chao Ishi rushed into Lu Feng's arms like a little cannonball. I want to go with him. The teacher asked, who is he? Is he your dad? He hesitated for a moment, then actually nodded. And just like that, he left with Lu Feng. The smile on my face instantly froze. At that moment, it felt like someone had slapped me hard across the face, and my mind was buzzing. That was the first time I went to kindergarten to pick him up, afraid of being compared unfavorably to other dads. I specifically went to get my hair done and ironed my shirts several times. Thinking of this, I still feel uncomfortable. Chao Ishi's eyes were full of tears, and he looked at me pitifully. Dad, I miss you so much. Won't you hug me? If it had been before, with him looking like this, my heart would have ached terribly, and I would have immediately picked him up, kissed him, and comforted him. But now I just looked at him coldly. I'm not your dad. You haven't had a dad for a long time. Saying that with anticipation in his eyes, I picked up Kaylee, who was beside me. Chao Ishi suddenly broke down and burst into tears. But I looked at him coldly, unmoved. Don't you have your own dad? You little bastard, get down. He's my dad. I won't let you steal my dad. He became increasingly out of control. I dodged sideways, and he fell to the ground with a thud. His palms were scraped red, and his knees and calves were even bleeding. Chenxue hurriedly squatted down to check his injuries. Chao Ishi looked at me with red eyes, his gaze extremely hurt and aggrieved. But I just looked at him coldly. Chun Baining, you've really changed. You used to love your son so much. How could you be like this now? I couldn't help but sneer. Of course, I've changed. Did you think I'd serve you both like a slave for the rest of my life? I also thought my life would be like this. But heaven had mercy on me and let me see your true colors. You are two completely ungrateful wretches. Now I don't want to waste any more time on you. Do you understand? Just because I punished you by making you stand in the rain on New Year's Eve? But you crossed the line. I interrupted her. Cross the line? Cross the line? Why are you so confident? You really think too highly of yourself, don't you? Who said I wanted you to have my children? We agreed before we got married that I, Chun Baining, would only have one child in this life, Ishi. You know how much I've cared for Ishi over the years, but you simply don't trust me. You've never treated me as your husband, never spoken to me as an equal. Even now, you're still looking down on me, thinking that if you want me to come back and continue to be your free nanny, I must go back. Unfortunately, it won't be as you wish. It's completely over between us. From today on, you go your way, and I'll go mine. We won't interfere with each other. For the first time, Chenxue showed a look of panic and unease in her eyes. I'm sorry, Baining. I did indeed fail to consider our relationship before. Can't you really forgive me? Forgive Ishi? We really did wrong. The child is still young. He can't live without you. Your nephew can also be brought back. We can live together, okay? I said mercilessly, no. The light in Chenxue's eyes instantly disappeared. Can't you give us another chance to make amends, even for Ishi's sake? I snorted coldly. Chao Ishi, you tell me, why do you have to say you regret it, that you miss me? Did you cherish me when I was by your side? How did you treat me? At the kindergarten gate, when the teacher asked who I was, you didn't say a word. As soon as Lu Feng came, you rushed straight to him, even acknowledging him as your dad. Chao Ishi, although you are only 6 years old now, I must say these words. Even though I am a dad, even though I am a grown man, I can also be hurt. You have hurt me again and again. Enough is enough. Now I don't want to give you any more chances to continue hurting me like this. So, from today on, I am no longer your dad. I hope you can understand this and stop making a fuss. Kayleigh and I already have our own lives, and I don't want to go back to the past. Chao Ishi broke down crying, clutching my leg tightly and refusing to let go. I don't believe it. I was wrong, Dad. You love Xiaoxi the most. Lu Feng, or whatever his name is, I will never talk to him again. From now on, I only want you to be my dad. Woo woo. Chenxue had no choice but to instruct the bodyguard beside her to carry him away. She knew that my mind was made up, and she finally decided to divorce me. Chapter 9. She insisted on giving me a portion of her assets as compensation, which I refused. Before leaving, she suddenly said, I'm sorry, Beining. Believe it or not, I really did love you. Although I only realize it now, please believe me. I smiled, turned, and left. Later, Chenxue didn't let go as easily as she said she would. Instead, she started pursuing me again. She said that I had married her as a substitute for my brother, and it was understandable that our marriage had failed. Now I want to openly pursue you as yourself, Chen Beining. Will you give me a chance to be my boyfriend? I'm a single mother. I have a child, he's 6 years old, but he's very well behaved. She went on, but I only said one word. No. She didn't give up. She continued to order me milk tea, buy me gifts, and seemed to enjoy it. This went on until 5 months later, when I had a new girlfriend. The girl was a new intern at our TV station, named Meng Fan. She had a crush on me from watching me on TV for a long time, and said I was her idol. Senior, I came to this station just for you. I even turned down an offer from CCTV. You can't reject me. After spending time together, I found that we were remarkably compatible in terms of our values and personalities. And I also wanted to give Kalu a complete family. She needed an aunt too. On the day we made our relationship official, Meng Fan cornered me downstairs and kissed me for a long time. After the kiss, I watched her walk back to her apartment. When I turned around, I saw a familiar figure under the streetlight, Chenxue. The moonlight and the street lamp made her face look pale. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying, and she looked haggard and broken. What are you doing here? As soon as I spoke, her tears instantly fell like broken beads onto the ground. Beining, is there really no chance for us? I smiled calmly. You should have seen it just now. I just got into a relationship. The sweetness of being in love made the corners of my mouth curl up uncontrollably. The light in her eyes instantly dimmed. Can't you not be with her? Her voice was choked with sobs, and she looked pitiful. I shrugged. That's not really possible. The girl likes me so much. She's been chasing me for almost 2 months. But I like you very much too. I'm sorry, but this kind of thing requires mutual affection. I like her more. I don't like you anymore. With that, I got in my car. Chenxue stood there frozen, as if she had been petrified, until my car drove away. It was only through the rearview mirror that I saw her cover her face, squat down, and sob uncontrollably. The last time I saw her was at my wedding. Our wedding was held in a church. While we were exchanging rings, I was drawn to a figure in the doorway. I looked over and saw it was Chenxue. When her gaze met mine, she quickly looked away, After that, we never saw each other again. Later, I heard news of them from our old mutual friends. Chao Ishi went abroad to study, leaving the country alone at a young age and rarely returning. It was said that apart from asking Mu Chenxue for money, the two never contacted each other. He even resented Mu Chenxue because of me. He blamed her for driving me away and for him not having a father at such a young age. As for Mu Chenxue, she completely fell apart after I got married. She stopped going to the company and drank heavily day after day. Our mutual friend said that in just a few months, she seemed to have aged 10 years, losing all her spirit. Now the company has gone bankrupt, and she seems to be working for someone else as a basic-level salesperson. But I heard that every year on September 26th, she goes to Century Park for a picnic. I smiled. September 26th is my birthday. I did mention once that it was my birthday wish, but I don't like picnics anymore.